For the last 30 years, one thing stayed true no matter how rough the economy got. You could always get on a plane for cheap, a $30 flight, a $40 hostel, budget airlines popping up on every route. The world basically became accessible to anyone with a basic income and a little ambition. That era is ending, and the reasons why are a lot more complicated than just oil prices. Let's put some numbers on this. A year ago, airfares were sitting at near record lows globally. Hotels, while not cheap, were still broadly accessible to middle-income travelers. Budget carriers were operating on hundreds of routes, keeping legacy airlines honest on pricing. Fast forward to today, travel-related costs are up 20% year over year. Budget airlines are collapsing, and the travelers being priced out aren't wealthy tourists. They're the everyday people who built their entire lifestyle around the assumption that cheap travel would always be there. So, what actually happened? There isn't one villain in this story. There are four, and they all showed up at the same time. Factor 1. The premiumization of travel. The first big shift is something economists call premiumization, where industries quietly stop serving the budget end of the market and concentrate everything at the top. In aviation, this used to be simple. Economy for regular people, business for companies, first class for the wealthy. That was the model for decades. Today, a single international flight might offer 6 different tiers: basic economy, regular economy, premium economy, business, first class, and private charter options layered on top. Airlines figured out that one premium economy seat generates roughly 33% more revenue per square foot than a regular economy seat. So why fill 10 rows of cheap seats when you can rip them out and replace them with 4 rows of premium ones? The same pattern is happening on cruise ships, where the fastest growing segment isn't family packages or budget sailings. It's ultra-premium yacht experiences co-branded with 5-star hotel groups, with cabins running up to $250,000 a week. This wouldn't matter much for budget travelers if the bottom of the market stayed intact. The problem is, it didn't. Factor 2. Budget airlines are disappearing. Budget carriers were the great equalizer. When a low-cost airline entered a route, ticket prices on that route would drop. Not just on the budget carrier, but on every airline competing for the same passengers. Now those carriers are shutting down, and the math of why they can't survive is brutal. A budget airline runs on wafer-thin margins. They need planes to be full, costs to be low, and fuel to be predictable. Remove any one of those 3 conditions, and the whole model breaks. Add to that the current state of aircraft supply. Boeing and Airbus are sitting on a combined backlog of over 12,000 narrow-body planes. Airbus alone has a production backlog representing roughly a decade of output at current delivery rates. Engine supply has become the single binding constraint on the entire global aviation market. This means even if a new budget carrier wanted to launch tomorrow and serve the routes left empty by collapsed competitors, they literally cannot get the planes. So when a budget airline exits a market, the pressure on legacy carriers to keep prices competitive drops almost immediately. They don't have to do anything aggressive. They just don't have to discount anymore. Factor 3. Accommodation has been hollowed out. While all of this was happening in the air, the ground side of budget travel was quietly collapsing too. When short-term rental platforms first launched, the pitch was simple: cheap, local, no-frills stays that undercut hotels and gave travelers a real alternative. For a decade, that's exactly what they delivered. Then 2 things happened. Property investors realized they could make higher yields by converting long-term rentals into short-term ones, effectively turning apartments into unlicensed hotels. Cities noticed their housing markets were being devastated and started cracking down hard. New York City's enforcement of short-term rental regulations saw listings in the city drop by over 90%, from tens of thousands down to a few thousand. Average hotel room prices in the city hit a record high within months of that crackdown, up over 12% in 2 years, more than triple the national rate. The pattern is playing out across Europe too. Major tourist cities are now charging day visitor entry fees. Barcelona, Amsterdam and Venice have all introduced tourist levies or caps on visitor numbers. Individually, these fees are small. Collectively, they signal something bigger: cities are consciously or unconsciously shifting to cater to higher spending visitors over budget travelers. Hostels, which were the bedrock of affordable international travel, never recovered from the pandemic either. The budget accommodation layer that used to sit beneath hotels has basically been removed from the market. Factor 4. The dollar and the debt. The fourth factor gets the least coverage, but arguably hits the hardest for regular travelers. For most of the past decade, a strong US dollar made overseas travel feel like a discount. Destinations like Japan became almost laughably affordable for American visitors as the yen weakened. People on average salaries were living like they were wealthy, because relative to the local currency, they kind of were. That dynamic is reversing. The dollar index has been weakening through 2026, with analysts forecasting it could drift down further by year-end. What that means practically is that even if prices in Tokyo, Paris, or Bangkok haven't moved in local terms, they've gotten more expensive for American travelers just because of the exchange rate. And anyone who is topping up their travel budget with a personal loan or credit card is doing so at interest rates roughly double what they were just 4 years ago. The cheap debt subsidy that quietly funded a lot of budget travel has disappeared. Meanwhile, people with significant investment portfolios in real estate have seen their asset values hold or grow, making travel feel more affordable to them, even as it becomes less so for everyone else. The travel market is splitting in exactly the same way the broader economy has been. Conclusion. Here's what's worth understanding about all 4 of these forces together. None of them is temporary. Aircraft backlogs don't clear in a year. The budget accommodation layer won't rebuild overnight. Currency pressures and interest rates move slowly. And once airlines figure out they can make more money per seat by going premium, they don't voluntarily go back. Travel is still possible for most people. And in inflation-adjusted terms, it's still cheaper than it was 20 or 30 years ago. But the trajectory has clearly shifted. The window where anyone with a basic income and some hustle could see the world on the cheap, that window is getting smaller. For a generation that was handed fewer economic wins than the one before it, smaller chance at home ownership, heavier student debt, more career instability, cheap travel was one of the real consolation prizes. The fact that this too is now being squeezed says something important about which direction the economy is bending. The golden age of budget tourism isn't completely over. But if you were planning to take advantage of it, the time to do that was probably a few years ago. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of where travel costs are heading and why, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to this channel. We break down exactly this kind of economic shift every week in plain language.